Hello and welcome. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to another edition of DJ Staples 93 Spotlight. Tonight, very excited to speak to this gentleman, as I'm sure the folks that are here in the chat already are excited to probably listen to him as well. We got the Matt Pinfield emotes already going on in the chat, so shout out to Victor Dancer, shout out to my moderators, Chris and Anne Marie, and everybody that's here listening. Welcome. So our guest tonight, I'm looking forward to speaking with him. There's a lot to discuss in a short time. Right now he's live Sunday nights on KLOS Radio 95.5. He has a show on Sunday nights called New and Improved. He's got a new podcast on Spotify only called Missed Riffs. So we're definitely going to talk about that. And he's originally from New Jersey, and this may be one of the few times he's ever been on Twitch. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Matt Pinfield. I wish I had the applause sound effects.
How you doing? Good to see you.
How you doing, buddy? It's good to see you.
It's great. Yeah, doing good. It's I'm out here on the West Coast, here in crazy Hollywood is where I live. So I'm it's funny. Knowing that you were from Jersey was very cool because I miss it. I haven't been back there since the October before the pandemic. You know what I mean?
Oh wow, so it's been a while.
19. Yeah, and I got to get back there and I get into my storage units, man. There's just one of them. I feel like everything in there I paid for 50 times over with the cost of storage.
Yeah.
You got
to be careful. Maybe we'll end up seeing all your stuff on an episode of Storage Wars against your.
If I don't pay my bill on time, right? I know.
Exactly.
I've been careful to do that, and then I have another storage unit that my friend is in the trucking business up in North Jersey. Kind of close to where the Sopranos intro was shot up there in like Kearney.
Sure.
So there's another container there with a bunch of my stuff. So yeah, it's crazy to have not had that stuff for a long time. But when I moved to San Francisco to do a morning show for a while, I didn't know where I was going to be moving. And everybody knows San Francisco is like, just real estate and rental, which are astronomical because of all the IT people that are there. So it's like, went there with 3 suitcases and started over, new furniture, like went out and bought a new stereo, the whole thing. And, yeah.
As long as you have your stereo, you're good to go. Now, originally you're from where? East Brunswick, New Jersey, correct?
Yeah, that's where, I was born in a town called Athens, Georgia, which is like where University of Georgia is.
Sure.
My parents are from Plainfield, New Jersey, where they were both in there. But I, my dad was a military. He was a Marine officer, fought in the Korean War, came back. I was the youngest of 3 kids, and I was born in Athens while he went back to school for physics. You know what I mean? He was, extremely bright. They wanted him to continue on to be but he got into teaching because he had 3 children. So he taught in East Brunswick. We first lived in Denellen for a couple of years, and then, which is really funny because, when that movie Whiplash came out about the kid who's the drummer.
Remember, yeah.
What's his name? Teller, I guess his last name. It was crazy. Well, the scene where he flips his car over because he's racing to go do the competition, and he crawls out of the car.
Right.
He really goes right by the house that I lived in. When I was a little kid, which I was in the theater with one of my daughters, and I went, "That's the house that I lived in with your grandma and grandpa back when." It was pretty fun.
That's cool. So, just so you know, it's funny you mentioned Plainfield. My girlfriend, who's in the chat, I'm going to put it up here. We can put comments on the screen, by the way. So when there's questions, I'm going to pop them up. Hopefully you can see them. She's originally from Plainfield as well. I've heard a lot of stories about the North Plainfield area and so on. But yeah, so there you go.
South Plainfield, I had an aunt. I used to go over there for barbecues all the time. And there used to be a club in Plainfield called the Clubhouse. It was like a 3-level club in the 90s. And before I went to work at MTV, we used to do concerts there. We had a bunch of people playing, and we would host the radio station. I was at a station on the Jersey Shore, WHTG, which was an alternative rock station. And I was there from 84 to 90, and then I was music director and then program director. So I was running the station. But we would do a bunch of live broadcasts from Plainfield. So it was kind of cool bringing it back home to where my parents were originally from,
Sure. Now, you said G1063?
Yeah, that was that station. It
Yep.
started as FM 1063, which was what they called it. And then when it was bought by a new company, they changed the call letters to G1063, which a bunch of my friends worked there, like, Brian Phillips, Rob Akampora.
Sure.
There was, it was still a great station. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Great stations on the shore of the Rat. Like, there's a lot of good places down there. So, and there's a couple classic rock stations, the Hawk and the Boss. And I'm actually on the Hawk. I'm syndicated on the Hawk. I have another show, a radio show called Flashback. That's like a 4-hour classic rock history show. I've been hosting for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Studio One syndicated. That's on 100 radio stations in the U.S. So on weekends, people can run it anytime from Saturday morning to Sunday evening at midnight, and it's on all over the country. So, and on the American Forces Network, wherever we have soldiers. So I've been doing that for a really long time. So, like, wherever I've lived, I've been continuing to do that show.
Sure. Now, I brought up G1063 real quick, just because I remember listening originally when I first came to New Jersey. I used to listen to 1063 on Sunday morning because it was an all acoustic brunch.
Yeah.
All these great artists, stuff, alternative tracks, and you're used to hearing them one way, but on a Sunday morning it was all acoustic, which I in turn kind of ripped off, truth be told. Here on Twitch on Sunday mornings, I would do an all acoustic brunch style thing, based off of what I used to hear on 1063. So yeah, that was a great station for sure.
Yeah, it was really cool. I think that we started that acoustic thing probably, in the mid, would it be the mid? Yeah, it would be early 1990s. So it was cool that they continued to do it. It's now, I think it's either a country station. It flipped to top 40. Then it was Spanish. I think then now it's country. I think it's called Thunder.
Yeah.
103 or something like that.
Correct.
That's what I'm told. Somebody went in there, this artist, Nicole Atkins from Jersey, and she went in there when they were clearing out the building. And she actually she's in Nashville now, but she has the original headphones from the studio. She's like, "Matt, I'll mail them to you." Which is, I told her I'd love to have them. So I've something from inside there.
Sure. So you've been doing this, you've been in broadcasting of some sort, whether it's radio or TV, for many, many years, 37 years, if not more?
Yeah, 37 years of radio, after college, so, and I continued doing college radio at that time as well, because I didn't feel like getting off the air. It was pretty funny, like I was still doing shows at Rutgers while I was doing weekends at 1063.
Mm-hmm.
It was still 90 when there was a change in management, and a new guy came in from WHFS, which was a really big alternative station in Washington, D.C. And the owner of the station said he was about to give the music director job to somebody else. And she said, "I think there's one more guy you should meet." And then when he met me, he said, "No, you're going to be the music director." And then that pretty much changed my life, because at that period of time, then all of a sudden I had complete access to the music industry, because people were working their records through me to the radio station. And I think the thing that was really interesting was that they said that it was a breath of fresh air, because I was not looking for reasons not to play records. I was looking for reason to add records to the playlist and to expose new bands. So it was something, in turn, I won a couple national music director of the year awards, in 91 and 92,
right,
which was pretty amazing. So, I was surprised about that, because nobody ever in a medium market like Monmouth and Ocean counties, it was always the major cities that always won those awards. So I think that was it. And, I did that for a while, and then, of course, went to MTV, filling in 93, 93, which was cool. And then, they're full time in 95. So it's been an incredible journey so far. It's pretty nuts, again, being in radio for 37 years. But I'm grateful, for this, it's amazing. And I'm really enjoying doing the show on Sunday nights in Los Angeles at KLOS, because it's a rock countdown. So it's like a new rock countdown, things like Royal Blood and Corey Taylor and the Pretty Reckless and bands like that. But I also do, because the station also plays a lot of classic rock, I'll do album anniversaries to keep it in context. So so this week what came out, like Diamond Dogs by Bowie or whatever.
Sure.
Something, it depends on the the week, or if it's a Kiss or an Aerosmith album, or it could be anybody, but I would do a story behind a song and kind of tell the whole story about how it was recorded, and usually there's always one really cool, interesting, or crazy story behind every album.
Right.
So that's like been an opportunity for me to do that. So that's what's, and the show's rated #1 for the last 4 months in its day part. So I'm very, very excited. We got the April ratings back yesterday.
Right.
And fingers crossed it continues to do well. I thought first they were like, you got a huge 14 share, which 14 share is like 14% of every available listener in that day part on a Sunday night in Los Angeles, or in Los Angeles County. So I thought we were like, is it a fluke? That's a crazy rating, but it's been steadily really good. So, I'm just grateful, and just keep doing what I'm doing, putting one foot in front of the other, just doing it, as you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that you had Sammy Hagar on recently, and I'm a big Sammy guy. So, I would love to talk to him one day. I've reached out, maybe he'll respond, but you never know. But I did see you had Sammy on.
Sammy's such a great guy. Like he's always been so cool. I discovered Sammy, when I was a kid. I heard that first Montrose album, and I absolutely loved it. I think it's like, it was the template, obviously. No pun intended that it was produced by Ted Templeman, who ended up doing it with Van Halen records. But, and like a lot of stuff on Warner Brothers. He was kind of the staff producer in Warner Brothers. But Sammy's voice was just amazing. And then, Ronnie Montrose on guitar. But, things like kind of imploded because of, personality clashes. And Sammy did all his solo stuff and was doing, and eventually joined Van Halen. But he's just one of the nicest, coolest guys in rock and roll. He's he loves, you can tell he just loves what he does. Yeah. He's really grateful. He's always like in a positive mood. He doesn't believe in, and he's super open and honest. So the interview that I did with him is up online, at the KLOS website, 955KLOS.com, and also on the KLOS YouTube channel. And he talked in depth about his last conversations with Eddie Van Halen, which was pretty cool, and it was pretty heartfelt. And those were really high rated shows with him, with one with Michael Anthony of Van Halen. That one was really did really well. So there's a lot of love for the Van Halen community in Los Angeles, where they're from here.
Sure. I don't know if you can see behind me, I have actually got
Diver Down.
Diver Down and Van Halen 1 to the left of that, in between my U2 Rattle and Hum. So I'm a big Van Halen guy. So I definitely want to touch more on that a little bit as we keep chatting. I got a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if you can see the screen or not. But
anyone.
Yes. So some of the followers here on Twitch, S810X is a 13-year-old kid who follows me here on Twitch. He is from, I want to say, the Chicago area. And his question was, he wasn't around when MTV was music and videos and stuff like that. So his question is, what was your favorite band that you've ever interviewed?
There are so many, if you look at, it depends on the genre, because I certainly loved, I've gotten to do like some pretty incredible interviews over the years, if you go back to the classic guys, I did McCartney, from the Beatles. I did all the Stones. So I was really lucky. I got to do all the Rolling Stones. It was the first time in 35 years they all sat together in one room, because they never do that, and that was for that album, A Bigger Bang. U2 were great to interview. Certainly Van Halen. But there's so many. And, whether it's The Cure or, I could just, there's alternative acts that, I've interviewed. U2, I've done some really great stuff with. I've done U2 in their studio in Dublin, which was pretty awesome. And they gave me like a CD of the All That You Can't Leave Behind album to take and walk around the streets of Dublin, like before the interview. So I got there, and like Bono gave me this book, this like a gift. It was this Irish, because he knows I'm half Irish. So it was like a Tuesday book. See, I'm Irish English, a little Italian, but mostly Irish English. Pinfield's an English name. It's from the Midlands, and it's from the Black Country. So that's the area where Sabbath, Zeppelin, all those bands, Slade. You can go down the list, but there's a lot of heavy music from the center of England, and a lot of great alternative acts too. But Yeah, so those were all great. It's really hard to say if there's one interview, but
Yeah.
I've been, like I said, I've been so blessed. I mean, just to sit there with Paul McCartney, and have him say to me, "Hey, man, if it wasn't my wedding anniversary to Nancy, you and I would go down to the pub and keep talking about rock and roll." I mean, those are like pinch me moments,
Yeah.
Like still, and Pete Townsend of the Who, Ray Davies of the Kinks. I mean, the list goes up. Page and Plant from Zeppelin. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. I mean, I've interviewed most of my heroes, which is just one of those things. I've never lost my enthusiasm for my love for music and for the artists. I still have that passion that I had when I was a 12 and 13-year-old kid. And I never want to lose that sense and ever be jaded.
Sure.
And even new music, that's why I love bands like Royal Blood, and obviously, like there's a ton of new bands out there. Glorious Sons, Dirty Honey, there's a list of so many that I really like. But
did you say Glorious Sons?
Glorious Sons, do you know that band? From Canada. Yeah,
love them.
They're one of my favorite bands. I love those guys, and I'm good friends with the singer now. We good friends. And then there's Des Rocks was on tour with them, and he's from New York.
Okay.
Rocco. But Glorious Sons are so great. They're a band that a lot more people I wish knew about.
I agree.
Songs like SOS, Sort of Shotgun, and Closer to the Sky. And there was that song Everything Is All Right. They're a great Canadian band. I really wish people would more people would check them out. Radiohead were great interviews. Oasis was a great. I did multiple Oasis interviews. There are just so many that were so cool and so much fun. I love doing 120 minutes. The difference, what's really interesting too, was that when I went into MTV full time, I was one of the first people, or only people, other than Louis Sargent, that was actually in the music department. So I wasn't just a host. I was like, because I came from that background of programming music at 106.3, they helped me into the music programming department. So I was one of the guys who helped pick videos, like gave bands like, 311 and a bunch of other people their first buzz clip, and then they would explode, you know what I mean? And it'd go from point A to point B. So it was so, and I was involved in picking the videos for 120 minutes. I see Victor Dancer asked that. Yeah, I was involved in that. We had a meeting every single Monday back in the days when MTV was really about music. Mondays, we would all meet at 1 p.m, New York City, 1515 Broadway. We all, we were on the 25th floor, and there was a big conference room, and we would all go in there at 1 o'clock and sit there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours, and watch videos. And literally, we'd be like, this is how the meeting would go. It'd be like, oh, that one's good for UMTV Raps. This is good for Headbangers. This is pop. This is good for all day. The 120 minutes video, that kind of thing. And, so that's really what that vibe was all about. And it was really fun. I loved it. It was a time when being in the MTV music department meant you could really help artists out. I mean, because, it was a different world then, and MTV was the center of the musical universe. So, it was like being the biggest top 40 radio station in the world, not just in one market, like a Z100, but, or like, a rock station, but it was literally for the entire country. And therefore, other than the really interesting thing was that it was also on around the rest of the world. It was on in Latin America. Yeah. It was on South America. I mean, it was just on everywhere, even in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Those shows, because I will meet people. Like I was doing a thing recently before the pandemic. I was doing a thing with my old boss at MTV it was for the Global City, not Global Citizen. It was called, the Governor's Global Tourism Summit in Las Vegas. And my old boss, Andy Schoen, hired me at MTV and called me up and he said, Matt, I'm going to go talk at this thing. What can you what's a good talking point about? I said, well, you know what? Vegas now exports bands, not just has them come in. I said, it's no longer where people go to die. There's like people having residencies that are, it's not like where you go to out to pasture like it used to be. And, I was talking about how, you've got the Killers, Imagine Dragons, Panic at the Disco. You've got all these bands that are actually from Vegas. So they're exporting a lot of music. And then he goes to me, why don't you just come and do this speaking engagement with me? He goes, I'm going to call up the governor's office. And he calls up and goes, yeah, they want you to come. So we went there. and did that whole speaking thing. But it's amazing when we talk about the influence that MTV had back in the day. And for me, I just love that I could help bands out, because for me, it was always, you could definitely tell that I was always excited to be there. I was never jaded, like, oh, whatever. And I certainly wasn't there just to get an acting job or because I was a model. I certainly wasn't there because I was a model. Because I
don't feel bad.
You know what I mean? So, but I was very, very, I got a lot of gratitude, and I talked to so many people that were, very, very grateful that in those days, we helped them get things kickstarted in their careers.
Sure.
Because that, now of course things are obviously so fragmented and all over the place. And some of that is great, obviously, and you have to move with the times. People always go to me, hey man, what don't you, like why did MTV go back to what it was? I'm like, it can't go back. The world's a different place.
I'm glad you brought that up. Because a couple of folks have already put it in the chat, and somebody reached out to me prior to the interview, and they say to me, like, find out Matt's thoughts on how MTV has evolved from how it was to when you were there to where it's at now.
Yeah, well, what I'll say is this. It's really kind of crazy. I'll explain that. First of all, they created reality TV by accident. And, I'm not a huge reality TV fan. Oddly enough, I'm in the first season of Real World kind of by accident. I wasn't even working there yet. I'm in it for a minute with Andre from the band Rain Dance, who's a friend of mine, and he's really cool guy. And he was in a band. There was the club, The Melody in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I used to spin there a few nights a week, and people would come from all over to hear me spin alternative music there and dance music. And one night he comes up to me and goes, hey man, I'm in this new show called The Real World. We're like, what's The Real World? And I'm like, okay. He goes, do you mind if we come to the radio station to 106.3 and shoot like a scene with the band, since you play us on the local, like a local rotation? I said, sure. And one of the guys from his band Rain Dance is Dean from Queens of the Stone Age and the Dead Weather with Jack White. So one of those guys went on to do that. But it changed so much. I mean, at least in the era that I was still there in the 90s and then the early 2000s, there was still a lot of music, obviously, and music was still a high priority. Maybe, and then it started to be, of course, wane. The reason it's really interesting, that whole thing, and even we did a relaunch of 120 Minutes in 2011, which kept burying at like 2 or 3 in the morning. So it was like they were dipping their toe in it, saying,
"We'll try," but yeah.
But then they would, like, if a Martin rerun on MTV2 got a 0.001 rating more, then they put that on and like before it, and it was just like there wasn't enough of a commitment to it. I mean, I commend them for trying to bring it back, and people were loving it, but it was just like it was on at all different times. They did a big press thing to relaunch it, and then they weren't committed to it. That's the absolute truth. But I never talk smack about MTV. I'm grateful for MTV. MTV gave me a national platform. They let me be myself, and that's one of the things that I remember the bosses saying in interviews. They would say, "Oh, well, just let Matt be Matt," and that's like, what's better than that in life? They're not trying to fit you into a box. They kind of let me do my thing, which was completely different than anything before that, because I certainly wasn't a pretty boy.
You're pretty. You're good looking.
And that's not dissing anybody else that was there. I mean, people. I know I see some questions. One came through like, "Who was your favorite VJ to work with?" They were all amazing. I helped Carson Daly get his job there. I'm the one who recommended him for his gig. But I loved working with Kurt Loder, who was a news guy. I loved Bill Bellamy. I mean, all of those guys. And even now, I'm really good friends with the original 4 that are still alive. J.J. Jackson died, but Mark Goodman, Alan Hunter, Nita Blackwood. I was just on their podcast as a guest, and I'm friends with them all. Martha Quinn. We never. The really cool thing was when I was there was never any friction between VJs. Everybody kind of got along. Not even kind of. Everybody did get along. Everybody was just kind of doing their thing and supporting each other. Yeah, I remember helping Tyrese audition. Remember, Tyrese was on the air for a little while, and I was helping him audition. They're like, "Hey, we're bringing in this singer, Tyrese. Can you help him with his audition?" So I worked with him and kind of taught him how to interview and before he did his taping for his thing, and then I interviewed him, and I
Right.
helped him get his job there, and he appreciated that so much that when we were doing like the beach house in the Bahamas, they had a big dinner for my birthday. It was Memorial Day weekend, and
I was just gonna say your birthday's coming up in what, 3 days?
yeah, Friday, which is unbelievable. I can't
There
believe
you
it.
go, man. Happy almost birthday.
I'm alive. It's the important thing,
Any day above ground, right?
Yeah.
Any day above ground is a good day, right?
I always say that. It's true. But yeah, so getting back really quickly. Yeah, Ricky Rackman. I gotta be honest with you guys. I saw somebody ask about Ricky Rackman and Paulie Shore. They
Yeah.
were both great, man. Ricky and I are still great friends. Paulie and I always got along great. I was in his movie called Paulie Shore is Dead.
Mhm.
Where I don't see Paulie as much. Ricky and I are going to be doing something together. Me and Ricky and Mark Goodman are going to be down at this podcast convention in Nashville coming up in August. Yeah. But yeah, Ricky and I have been friends forever. We always, like I said, it was one of those things where there was never any weirdness, which I know a lot of people would ask about. And I'm like, no, man, we were always like rooting for each other, and even like, after Ricky left and I was there, Ricky was always like, yeah, Matt, you're doing great, man. I love that you're doing the rock stuff and the alternative stuff. And so those friendships go long, and,
Yeah.
but getting back to, I was going to explain how, reality TV, to many of us, we thought it was like, oh God, look at this now. And of course it started that whole genre, which I was never a huge fan of. I'll be the first to admit, although, some of the shows, I guess, are pretty good. I don't want to disrespect them, but
Right.
I was in that one episode of the first season of Real World, and I forgot I was spinning the night before, and I'm running a radio station. I'm not on camera, so I'm like wearing a shirt with a stain on it. It's ripped, and
Yeah.
I'm like, for like when I finally went to work there, and they were still rerunning every season. They would yell down the hallway, "Look at that with his ripped shirt!" Making fun of me like we were busting my balls, which was really funny, like like everybody. But it was an accident. How the Real World and that stuff happened was they wanted to do a soap opera, but they didn't want to pay union dues for actors.
Okay.
Yeah, so they were going, which like they were like, wait a minute, we're starting a new precedent. We're not part of SAG-AFTRA, which is Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. It used to be two separate unions, but now it's one. And they didn't want to pay actors, so they were like, well, if we're not going to do the soap opera, what do we do? And they're like, well, we already paid for the house. We'll put an ad in Backstage Magazine. And that's literally, it was that accident. And then that was responsible for better or for worse, the reality genre. And, I'm not a huge fan of it, but, I'm also not against it. I mean, look, whatever it takes. That's what I always say, for some people to get a leg up with whatever they're doing in their life. That's the same reason why I've always supported Chris Daughtry. Like people used to say, oh, Chris is one of my dear friends, and like, he's a rock guy who loved music, and American Idol was his ticket to getting recognized. And and for anybody who goes, oh, that guy was on Idol, I'm like, he used the platform that was available to him, and he made the most of it. And you can't.
I agree.
And he's got a great voice, and he's such a great guy, man.
Constantine Morales. She's another guy from the Jersey area, right?
Dude, what a great guy. I mean, I always say that, it's like, people they're looking for, I mean, if that's the way they get discovered, you know what, you can't hold that against them. And people can judge all they want, but you know what? I mean, again, it gets them started. That's the most important thing.
You got to get a foot in the door somehow, right?
Exactly.
I want to ask you about this website. I don't know if you're familiar with it, because everybody that's here in the chat, obviously we're chatting about MTV and 120 minutes. Have you seen this website, Matt, where it's 120?
The guy who made it reached out to me, and there's one thing in it that needs to be corrected. That it doesn't mention that my first ever show was with Depeche Mode in '93.
Oh, okay.
With Songs of Faith and Devotion. It doesn't have me listed as the host for that, but that was my very first episode of 120 minutes. And but I think it's amazing and beautiful what this young man did, and he worked extensively, exhaustively on putting this thing together. And I told him how much I appreciated it and thought it was great, the work that he did to do it. And it was a great resource and archive for people to find music that they loved, or they might have been wondering, oh, there was this video I saw, this song, I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just an amazing genius thing for him to do, and I was very appreciative of it. So that was just that one mistake, but whatever, it's no big deal.
Yeah, it's clear that there was a lot of work that went into doing that. And I remember the first time I found it, I'm like, this is fantastic. It's so genius.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was such a great show to do. I love doing 120 minutes. I mean, how it happened for me, I don't know if we mentioned it, but I wrote a book. I mean,
I was going to bring the book up. Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you have actually the graphic or any of that stuff, but I wrote a book in 2015. It came out in 2016, and thanks to Judd Apatow, it got re-released last May, because he had said that it was a great book and the stories were amazing. Sure. And all of a sudden the paperback got released. I was like, wow. I was so happy about that. I thank Judd for that. But yeah, it was pretty amazing that I got the opportunity to write a book. Danny Goldberg, the guy who worked with Led Zeppelin and co-managed Nirvana, had written a book, and he and some of the guys from Pearl Jam and some other bands were like, man, why haven't you written a book yet? Matt, you got so many stories. You've got a pretty interesting journey. Why don't you write a book? And a lot's happened since that period of time. You know what I mean?
There it is. There's
the Alfred Hitchcock profile cover. And, the book is named after the Killer song that Brandon Flowers wrote the night that he met me. It's basically about me, and it's inspired by a story that I told him about soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I had gotten a call when I was vice president of A&R at Columbia Records, when I was making records for a living, and overseeing signing bands, making records. The U.S. Army reached out to me, and they said, look, man, a lot of young soldiers know you from MTV, and we're going to be doing a program for returning soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan, some wounded, some who are not, but just all people that are musicians, that are music lovers, that are players. We want to do something really good for them. So we're going to put together this weekend in Colorado City, Colorado, at the Army place out there. And so I went there, and I was there for 3 days with all these soldiers. And at the time, I got on a plane from there and flew to Las Vegas to try and sign the Killers. Now, then, other than Island Def Jam and my label, Columbia, where I work, everybody had basically turned them down. They were like, I don't know why or how they would not realize Mr. Brightside and Smile Like You Mean It would have been huge hits. And they hadn't written Somebody Told Me yet, but it was coming. You know what I mean? So I was super grateful, about that whole situation. I'll tell you, I landed there after I did it, and I got picked up by their old manager and their lawyer, who's their new manager. Who, you want to hear about the Las Vegas Mafia? So the Killers manager is Robert Reynolds. His brother is Dan Reynolds from Imagine Dragons, and his brother, who manages Imagine Dragons, is Mac Reynolds. So it's like these guys are the kings of Las Vegas music.
Yeah.
But this will blow people's minds if you don't know the story and haven't heard it before. So I get picked up, and I go watch the Killers playing in Ronnie Vannucci, their drummer's parents' garage. They were playing in their parents' garage, and they were doing Mr. Brightside. I mean, they had Mr. Brightside. They had all those songs, and they had a single that was released in the UK on this label called Lizard King. It was an EP with Mr. Brightside, Smile Like You Mean It on top, and a song called Who Let You Go that later appeared on their B-sides album Sawdust. And so, they were so happy that I was there. I watched them do, they just written Midnight Show that appeared on the Hot Fuss album. They'd written it the night before. They were playing it, and we all went out to dinner that night. And, they were asking me a whole bunch of questions. And when it came time, it was a Monday night, right? Because I'd been all weekend with the soldiers. And at the end of the dinner, I just said, hey, can anybody drive me back to my hotel? And so Brandon Flowers goes, man, I'll drive you back. And, now, of course, they're a stadium band. But at this point, they were still working their day jobs. Like, he was a bellboy at a hotel. One of the other guys was taking urine samples for the fights, like that were happening in town. Another guy worked at one of the quick wedding chapels. I mean, it was like this kind of almost like it sounds like it's fiction. Somebody wrote this story, but it's true. And we get in Brandon Flowers' car, and it's an old AMC. It doesn't even have a CD player at this point. And, this is the early 2000s. He's got a couple cassettes. He's got the Beatles' Help and the Beatles' 62, 66. He goes, which one do you want to hear? And we'd had a few drinks. And I go, let's listen to Help, man. And then we got in the car, and we're driving down the strip, and we're singing Help the night before You Got to Hide Your Love Away, top of our lungs.
Yeah.
Parks the car at my hotel. And we go in and we sit at one of the bars. It's a Monday night, so it's like literally us and the bartender. It's almost like a Frank Sinatra like scene where the guy's by himself, lonely, on the cover of No One Cares by Frank Sinatra. It's just the three of us, and we start talking more about, Brandon wants to know a lot more about what's going on in my life. I was going through a breakup at the time.
Sure.
I was, because my marriage was splitting. There was a bunch of stuff happening. And, but also, he was so interested in that whole thing that happened with, mentoring the soldiers. So he went home that night and he wrote all these things that I've done. And that's where that line, I got soul, but I'm not a soldier, comes from in that song.
Love that line.
Which is like such a great bridge. And, and he ended up, like at that point, I got a call the next day from their manager at the time, Braden Merrick, goes, dude, Brandon just wrote this incredible song about you, man, about your, your struggle with your relationship ending and a thing with these soldiers. I'm like, really? That's great. And then eventually I heard the song and I was blown away by it. And, ultimately I got the phone call that they got a bigger offer from Island Def Jam. Lear Cohn, who ran the label, basically told those guys, whatever you need, so Columbia, I didn't get to sign them, which was disappointing, but I talk about it in the book. I'm like, I wear two hats. I was still at K-Rock in New York doing the balls, doing that show. And people were like at the label going, how could you even talk to those guys, man? They didn't sign me. I'm like, no, because they're good people and I love their music. And, and I wear two hats. I'm like, I help program. I was also, involved in the picking of music for K-Rock at this point. While I was at Columbia, I just ethically could never vote on a Columbia record. Like whenever my records came up, even if it was somebody I signed, I couldn't. I was like, I had to be quiet.
Yeah, sure.
Anything, because that's that would be considered payola or plugola. So right. I would never do that. And they were very careful, but they also wanted me in the music meetings to pick music for K-Rock. So, but that was the situation. But I got the call, and I even took those guys out to dinner to congratulate them for signing with another label. Which people were like, "What are you, out of your mind?" I'm like, "No." And I'm still friends with them. But like somebody said, certainly if I had Hot Fuss, that would have been my second daughter's college fund.
Sure.
But I will be, I think a good consolation prize is having a song like All These Things I Have Done written
Absolutely.
About. Yeah, which is a great, it's beautiful. Yeah. It's an incredible song. So I was just very grateful. Well, that's the story behind that. And there's a chapter on that in the book. There's some really interesting chapters. Chapter on me and David Bowie in the book, me and Lou Reed, me and U2, Ramones, Kiss. There's a bunch of stuff in there. And then there's different chapters called Encounters, and then there's other chapters that are just kind of going through my life and the different areas that I work. So it was a lot of fun to do, But getting back though to other things, I want to answer people's questions too, unless you more as well.
One of the questions somebody had asked earlier, obviously you've been with a lot of bands, you've seen a ton. Do you remember the first show you ever saw?
Well, I'll tell you what, the first show I saw was a little disappointing. It's the one your parents take you to. And as much as I loved the song American Pie, and I thought it was a great song, it was Don McLean at the Princeton University gym.
All right.
Other than Vincent and American Pie, and a song he had called Narcissisma, which was the only one that had a little tempo.
Sure.
It was okay. But the next show I saw, the next two that were super important. Well, I saw Jethro Tull do the War Child tour at Madison Square Garden back to back. Then I saw one of the most important shows of my life was Queen doing Night at the Opera at the Beacon Theater, which is Bohemian Rhapsody, when it was new, I'm a little kid and I'm like, in the nosebleeds with my brother, my older brother, and my sister-in-law took me to see Queen, and it blew my mind. I mean, they were so incredible. Freddie was just like, and he still had long hair back then. It was kind of like he still had that look going on.
Yeah.
And he was doing the first 4 albums, like Sheer Heart Attack, Queen 1 and 2, and Night at the Opera. And man, that show blew. Like, it's still, like, it goes down in history as one of my favorite shows I've ever seen, because it was just like, after that, then I went and saw Bad Company, and they kind of just, as much as they were great, they were just kind of sitting there jamming. So Paul Rodgers is one of my favorite singers, but after seeing Freddie like command and take over the stage at a theater, it's kind of hard to like the next like, why can't you be like Freddie? No, like that. But regardless, so that Queen one was really important. Same year, I saw David Bowie do Station to Station. I saw Aerosmith do Rocks. Wow. I saw a bunch of really cool shows. And then I used to see these package shows, like Cheap Trick, UFO, and Rush on the same bill at the Palladium. Judas Priest, Stars, and REO Speedwagon, it's funny. I was talking to Rob Halford about it yesterday because I was interviewing him about his book. That's Confess, his book. And I got him to do a little cameo for my new podcast where he's talking about this band that doesn't exist, about throwing them off the tour. He did it for because I'm getting my friends in bands to do these little cameos in my comedy, fake band podcast. But those shows were incredible. But that Queen show was amazing, and I've been very, very lucky. Princeton University Gym. That's where it was. That was it. But what's funny? I did see, and I see that AMGG7 said that. I'll tell you who I saw years later at the Princeton University Gym was Elvis Costello and the Attractions. Man, wow. There was a weekend when I was, in high school, where we got in a station wagon on a Thursday night, and we went to see the Police for $2.
Oh my God!
Police played the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia, and they played for $2. And they only had it was like the first time I saw U2 when Boy was the only album out.
Yeah.
It's only out at Let Us Do More. So they had to do songs over. So U2 did I Will Follow in the beginning and for an encore. And the Police did the same thing. They did Can't Stand Losing You, and then they encored with it as well because they didn't have enough songs.
That's fantastic.
But in that same weekend, I saw Police on a Thursday night, and we hung out with them afterwards on the street, and I always there's a part in my book, and I've told Sting this story where we went to pick up tickets. Before Ticketmaster, there was a thing called Ticket One, and it was in the being in record stores, luncheonettes. It was all over the country, and it happened to be there was one in East Brunswick at this luncheonette on Route 18 in New Jersey. Me and my friend went up to there to buy those tickets, and the guy behind the counter goes, "Yeah, this band, the Police, better enjoy the show out less because they're going nowhere." Yeah. Wow. One of the biggest bands of the 80s. I told Sting that story. He was laughing about it, man. It was great.
It's so funny because you talk about the price of tickets back then. I actually have a photograph on my wall from Maple Leaf Gardens as a kid growing up for U2. And it's for those that know, in Toronto, Maple Leaf Gardens, the sections were colors, right? So the gold section were the best seats you could buy. It's a U2 ticket, and it's $16.
Wow. And what tour was that?
What's that?
What tour was that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think it's the Unforgettable Fire.
Yeah. They played for that one in Jersey. They played the Meadowlands, and then they played it. Yeah, and they also played the Meadowlands again for Joshua Tree.
Yes.
Maybe they came back and did something bigger, but
you can't get tickets like that now. It's impossible.
Can you imagine paying $16 for a ticket?
And then fast forward to today, a good friend of mine, Jason, out in the California, Jason Bracktune, he's also a club DJ out in LA. He's a big Nine Inch Nails fan, and he recently tried to get tickets for Nine Inch Nails on Ticketmaster, but unfortunately, the regular guy just can't do it. The tickets are so out of the pricing. Scalpers get the tickets first, and their average Joe just can't do it. So the poor guy was a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, that's a shame because Trent would not like that. He would. Trent would be well against that. Trent and I've been friends since Pretty Hate Machine. I got the story's great. It's like Trent was at the New Music Seminar with a friend, with his old girlfriend, and and a couple other guys from the band, and they were literally handing out cassettes. There was a cassette with Head Like a Hole, Down in It,
Great song.
Spin, and The Only Time. Those were the 4 songs from Pretty Hate Machine that were on a cassette, and they were handing them out. And then I was introduced to him, and I started talking to him. And then eventually, you know, him going to the Limelight in New York City and for parties there. And, you know, we were just, and then he came to the radio station on the Jersey Shore to 106.3. And we struck up a friendship that we still have to this day, you know. And Trent's just one of the, you know, I'm just so proud of everything that he's achieved and just how great he's doing, you know. And, you know, he's been sober for a long time. I've been sober for 1 year and 3 weeks.
Yep. Happy anniversary, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you for that. You know, I appreciate it. Man, do I feel better. I feel so good. You know, I just, you know, I'm sure I love the kind of even keeled, you know, everybody, like I always say to people, you know, just because you get sober doesn't mean that every day is going to be great. I mean, that's unrealistic. It's life on life's terms, and you're going to have good and bad days. You're going to have days where things don't go the way you want them to go. And, you know, you're also we're going to have, you know, those things those life happenings, losses of jobs, losses of relationships, and losses of life of people that we love, you know. And it's like, it's really takes a lot of work and commitment. But I've got like the most unbelievable sober community in Los Angeles. Like it's so many rock stars that you guys know, and like comedians. It's like, you know, and actors and people like that. And I mean, it's just, and it's not like it's an elitist group or anything like that. It's not that at all. It's just that because we all work in entertainment, you know, there are certain meetings that are really entertainment based. But we also all like, I mean, you'll see Ringo at like a meeting on Thursday night where, you know, anybody could be there, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. You know what I mean? It was that kind of thing. And Ringo's been really supportive. He's been unbelievable. But all these guys, it's just, I'm so grateful. And I would never, of course, because it's an anonymous program, I would never out or talk about anybody's, because there are people that are in rock and roll that are very famous that don't want people to know that they're in the program.
Sure. Yeah.
And out of respect to them and my friendships with them, and because that's part of, you know, literally the traditions and the principles of it, you know, but those other guys that have come out, you know, like Ringo, Joe Walsh, people like that, man, you know, I hang with them on a pretty regular basis, and everybody knows that Duff and Slash are sober from Guns. Hang with those dudes, you know, so it's all, you know, and Trent, you know, and so it's just an incredible group of people, and a lot of comedians too, you know, because you know, we've all dealt with a lot of stuff, but it's you know, I mean, you know, if you want to, I should let you guys ask questions. I know anything is, you know, anything is up. You can ask me anything. You know, I'm totally open.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, you had your accident in December, and now you've been sober as well. I mean, support groups and friends are clearly, you know, what more can I say? I mean, without a good support group behind you, how did it feel after your accident? I mean, all the love and support that you got, not just from your friends, but from people across the world that didn't even know you, right? I'm sure sending you messages, what have you, get well, hurry up. And, you know, like, how does that make you feel?
We lost for a minute. Are you back now?
We're still here. Yeah. You're a little frozen.
You're asking me about the, see me now? Okay, great. You know, it was an incredible night. I'll never forget the night that I was hit by a car. It was December 3rd, 2018, towards the end of the year. I was crossing the street. I was not drunk. I was sober, man. I was just like, I just come from getting something to eat, literally.
Yeah.
You know, not too far from where I live here in Hollywood. And, you know, people drive like maniacs everywhere. You know that. And this person had, you know, run a red light or something, because as I was crossing the street walking, I was like, wow, it's unusually quiet tonight. That's weird. And then by I get to the third lane, you know, when you're trying to cross on a 4-lane street, and all of a sudden out of the corner of my eye, I see a car gunning towards me. Jesus. And I just like reacted. So I jumped up, and her car caught my leg and snapped my leg in half. You know, bottom part of my leg, compound fracture. I went up like a bullet through a windshield, up and into a car. Luckily, I would have been under it and probably dead had I not seen her out of the corner of my eye and reacted, tried to jump up out of the way, because that way I was jettisoned, but I went into her windshield with my head. So it tore my head open right here. They did an amazing job from here to here. And this ear was sewn back on, part of it. I went through a windshield. She hit the brakes, and it happened so fast that I was conscious for all of it. So I don't remember going through the windshield. I remember trying to jump out of the way, and the next thing I remember is spinning off the hood of the car. And so I landed about 15 feet away on my back and on the back of my head. Luckily, I wasn't in the middle of the street. I was on the side of the street. It was 7:45 at night. There were still people outside, because it was, luckily there were some witnesses, and there was also, people there to call 911. The funniest thing in the world is, my phone survived it being thrown 100 feet. I never found my sneakers again. Or they went. Not that I would care about those. I was lucky to be alive. So I'm laying on the ground, and I forget my phone, and I call my girlfriend at the time. It's now my ex-girlfriend. But I call her, and I'm like, because I don't want to wake up anybody in my family. I didn't want to call my children because that would scare them. I didn't want to call my mother, who's elderly. So I called my girlfriend, who was out of town, and I said, look, I got hit by a car. I don't know what's happening. I don't know, what's going to, and I'm bleeding out everywhere. So much so that the neighbors are like, because one of Tool's managers lives like right next to me over here. And he goes, yeah, people were saying, hey, it's some guy with red hair and a red beard. And of course, that was when I had a beard, but it was blood. My head was split up. So they picked me up on a tarp, and they put me into the EMS. Took them 9 minutes to get there, which was really kind of scary, because had my femoral artery been severed, I would have been dead. 5 minutes, you bleed out. Yes. At one point, I'm in like adrenaline shock, so I try to lift myself off the ground, and then I really looked down, and my leg was like this, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. So, at this point, so they bring me into the car, they cut all my clothes off, they throw like a robe over me, and they put morphine in my arm, and they go, can you feel your toes? And I go, yes. And they look at me and they go, you're a miracle. They go, you're hit. Most people wouldn't survive, or they'd at least be brain dead or paralyzed. They go, it's a miracle that you are still here. And then sure enough, I go under, and, very blessed and lucky. I had a lot of great friends, and just people that, like everybody from my old, like the people that run MTV now sent stuff to the hospital to all my friends, and tons of musicians. Everybody came through and visited me in the hospital. It was like, it really helped. And I was in 2 different hospitals. First, I was in Cedars-Sinai. And I should tell you a funny story that you'll laugh about. Is that, maybe it's no laughing matter, but, my face is taped up, and they're pulling glass out of my head, and they're getting ready to sew my head back up. And I hear one doctor say to the other, he goes, are you going to use staples? And the other one goes, no, man, I watched this guy on MTV. He's a rock dude. I'm going to sew him up slowly.
You can handle it.
So he was a fan of rock. And he's like talking to me while he sew me up, and I'm in so much pain. I'm like, can you give me just a little more, whatever?
More morphine, yeah.
And, and then it took them, my heart rate didn't go down for 7 hours, so they couldn't operate on my legs. So it was awful. You couldn't drink any water. But look, people will say to me, they go, man, you have a great attitude for a guy who got hit by a car. I'm like, that's because I'm alive.
Yeah.
I'm here. So I was just grateful to be alive.
And now it seems like you're back stronger. You're like the $6 million man. You're stronger. You're faster. Like things are going well.
Yeah, I'm really grateful, and, I relapsed during the COVID, like my, I was it was a situation where I had gone through, I was in a relationship where, I cared about the person, but, they were going through their own issue, and they didn't want to get sober. They didn't want to straighten their situation out. And, I, of course, wish that person the best. I wish her the best. But I just couldn't be in a relationship with somebody that was getting, like, wasted in front of me. You know what I mean? And I just couldn't take it. So I ended that relationship, within months after I was hit by the car, because I kind of figured out that I needed to make a change in my life. Mm-hmm. But during COVID, I was all of a sudden, everything was kind of taken away, like, going to meetings, going to comedy shows, going to see music,
Sure.
Just going to dinners, just my community, my brothers and sisters, and it was one of those situations where ironically, I was doing a show to raise money, like called In a Lonely Place, from my living room. I call it In a Lonely Place after a Smithereens song and a Water song, and an old Humphrey Bogart movie from the 50s. But I thought it was a good name because I was in a lonely place by myself. And I was, and then one day I was just like, really, there was all the uncertainty of COVID. A few of my friends had passed away. And I was, one day I made a mistake of, I went across the street and I said, I saw a bottle of vodka and I went, maybe I'll do that. And of course it wasn't the best idea. But it didn't take long before my friends realized that I was like, they could tell there was something wrong. So within a week they were like, hey man, we got to get you some help. And it was unbelievable because, your insurance only covers so much, and Music Cares gave some money to it, which is, I've done a lot of charity work for a lot of recovery organizations, but my friend didn't he didn't tell me, and we're driving up to this rehab center up in the Bay Area. Okay. And halfway up, there's a place between Los Angeles and San Francisco called the Grapevine, which is halfway there. And right around there, I said to him, I go, so who lent us the money for me to go? Who do I got to pay back? He goes, oh, no. I go, or is there some kind of angel investor like I'm going to owe money to? What is it? He goes, no, we're doing a GoFundMe. And I go, GoFundMe? I'm like, you can't ask people for money for me. And I go, no. I was like, it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he goes, no, man. Just, and this is a great friend of mine, Christian Barrow, great guy. He's been in the music business for a long time. Sure. Just wanted it, because the year before he had lost a friend to alcohol who drank himself to death. And he was, he was determined that he wasn't going to let me get anywhere near that, and I think, so he, what a brother. He drove me all the way up, but I was like freaked out about that. But I just, at this point, my friends were like, look, just let us deal with this. And they did. Then Rolling Stone magazine got involved. Rolling Stone wrote a big article about it. A whole bunch of musicians and fans and co-workers that I'd worked with over the years had all donated money to pay for my treatment, which was unbelievable. My heart, I purposely at one point I was talking to them up there about maybe having my phone once a week. And then I realized I didn't want to concentrate on what was going on outside of everything. I needed to focus on my recovery. And so what I did was, I was getting better. And at the end of my rehab, they printed out all the names of all the people that had donated and their messages to me. And I was like in tears, man, because it was like really heartfelt.
Sure.
I realized how much people really, really cared. And, I owe that to them, and I owe that to my children, and I owe it to myself and everybody to stay sober and stay the course. So here I am now. I'm a year in 3 weeks, and and I feel great, and and I'm just keeping up that fight. And it's not, life's better. Life's better without the struggle. It is. It's a job. It's a job trying to keep that maintained. It's not sustainable. Not for a guy like me who for years partied with all these bands that we've lost so many friends that we love, musicians that you guys know that we love, the guys that were friends of mine. I mean, heartbroken. People that had the tendency to go off, like that were true alcoholics or addicts, either got sober and clean, or a lot of them aren't here anymore. So I'm so grateful. And, but I just figured I'd tell you that story because I knew that, I wanted to be very open. I'm very open about that kind of thing. And Rolling Stone did a second article where I told the whole story. And then Variety magazine did a recovery issue with me and Rob Lowe and the Osbournes, with Ozzy, Sharon, and Jack, and with Elizabeth Vargas from ABC News. And we were all talking about our journeys with recovery and, back. So, it was, I'm just considering myself blessed, man. I love music so much that that's, to me, the greatest drug in the world is music, man. Music and the love of the people in your life, man. What's better than that? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I want to say I'm happy for you that the recovery and everything's going well. I'm very happy that the accident, you recovered well from that. I've been a big fan of yours for a long time. And just kind of like you said, when you're lucky, right? You're working in music, you get to work with people that have become your great friends. I mean, it's really not even work at that point, right? I mean, it's just something you're fortunate enough you love to do, and you get paid to do it.
Well,
So
we always joke and say, man, we would have done this for free. You know, I remember
absolutely, sure.
Chris Martin was coming to me. He goes, I'm waiting for him to find out that I'm getting paid for this. What's going on? Like, you know,
Yeah.
it's so funny. He's
Yeah.
so self-deprecating. It was hilarious.
That's why I do Twitch for free, because I'm enjoying this. You know.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things I still do for free, and I do a lot of charity stuff. So my thing is to give back and do as much to raise money for other organizations, like, you know, Save the Music. I did a whole thing hosting for, and there are multiple recovery organizations like Road Recovery in New York City, Road to Recovery. There's mental health, a lot of mental health charities. I donate my time to as many as I can, because it's really important to be of service and give back to people.
Sure.
Because it's just the most important thing in the world, man. Because they always say you can't keep what you don't give away. But I really believe, I just think it keeps you seriously grounded, I'm just grateful. But you're right. I mean, I wake up every day and I love it. I wake up every day and I put on vinyl. You know what I mean? Like the first thing I do in the morning. Like
What
I have
this morning?
albums, but I have like 4,000 45s. Like there's a wall of 45s, and I'll go in there and I've like, so much stuff. Like, and I'll go and I go, well, I feel like hearing this morning. It could be from the 60s, 70s, right? It could be 80s, 90s, whenever. But there's 45s, and I just will put on, or I'll grab an album and I'll put on a couple songs. I still stream too. Don't get me wrong. I love vinyl. Before or after coffee. I'll be honest with you. It's funny. It depends. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll the song will be in my head, and I'll go, oh man, I can put that tune on right now. And I'll put but usually it's around the same time. Maybe
what was the song? What was this morning's song?
What did I put on this morning? It was the anniversary of Diamond Dogs by Bowie. So I put on like just side one of that. I listened to Diamond Dogs, Sweet Thing, and Rebel. And because yesterday was the anniversary of that album. And I put on a song by band Free, Paul Rogers band. 7-inch I'd gotten of a song, a B-side that was on an album, the same album at all right now, a really, really great kind of heartbreak tune called Oh I Wept that I loved. It's really mellow, but I loved it since I was a kid,
Mm-hmm.
Came out when I was a really young kid, but it just, I think I put that on. But usually I try to put on something a little uplifting in the morning. I mean, that's usually the idea, is to put on something, and it could be a Tommy James and the Shondells single. I mean, whatever, you know what I mean? Or the Kinks, or, or some Zeppelin. I don't, it's always something, or the Cure, in between days, something. It could be, I just kind of threw it. And there was like Stone Roses, I Want to Be Adored. I think that was one of the singles that I pulled out. So there's always, just so much cool stuff. I'm just, I'm a fan of all different eras and genres of music, and all different areas of rock, obviously, because, liking one thing for me is too limiting,
Great. Yeah.
And, like people talk about guilty pleasures, and it's like,
I was going to ask you about your guilty pleasure. So let's hear it.
Well, you know what? My guilty pleasure, I was joking. I talked about it in the book too, but it's funny. And there's this song by ABBA called SOS, which I love, right? And I had the 45 when I was a kid. And it was funny because I was in a rock band. It's junior high. Like, I'm the singer of the band. And I remember now I just say, hey, look, I love that ABBA song, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, I remember, sorry about this, guys. Let me try and fix this.
All right.
Looks kind of crazy. Here we go. Is that a little better? Let me just do that.
Good.
Here we go. But I will say that now that's even worse.
Your eyes.
Here we go. Let me just see if I can figure out a way to make that not so crazy. Here we go.
At least we know it's nice and sunny in the West Coast.
That's a little better there.
There you go.
But that ABBA song, it's a funny joke, because when you're a kid, you're so conscious of like people knowing what you like, and you feel like you got to be a certain way. So I'm in this band and we're doing, if you got to remember, it's the 70s, so we're doing like, Bowie, Aerosmith, Free Bad Company, just a bunch of other things, and so then all of a sudden, happy birthday to you too. How you doing, AMGG7? Happy birthday, man. We are definitely are. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I want you to know, so you know, I'd be there singing in the band, but then I brought home the ABBA single SOS.
Oh, boy.
Closing the window in my house.
Don't want anyone to know what you're listening to, huh?
Yeah, you know, and it's funny. I talked to a lot of songwriters about how great that song is, and just like how like the chorus part when the like multi-layered acoustic guitars kick in, it sounds so great. It's like, you know, so I admit that. I admit that's one of those things.
I actually went with Tim, our mutual friend Tim. We went and saw Jericho and his band Fozzy, and they played SOS.
They did?
Yeah, and I looked at Tim like, this is amazing. He's like, he just looked at me and smiled. He's like, because, you know, they started out as a cover band initially, and they came up with SOS, and I couldn't believe just how great it was. And I thought, hey, man, if it's cool enough for Jericho to do an ABBA song, then I'm cool with it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just love you. I made a decision, and I think for those of you out there who love like guilty pleasures, you know what? You shouldn't feel guilty, because if you love it, it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, no matter what it is, even if it's not cool, that's, you know, if it's something that makes you feel good, you know?
Yeah.
I remember, you know, I was doing a Grammy event, and Gail King was there, you know, from CBS News. And Gail goes to me, she comes up to me and goes, you know what I like about you, man? You like all kinds of music. You're not just one genre. And I said to Gail, I go, you know, Gail, there's only two kinds of music that moves you and music that doesn't. And she goes, I'm going to use that. I said, feel free to use that anytime. But it's true, you know? Dancing Queen is great too. I see somebody wrote that. Somebody wrote Tarzan, but there's a bunch of stuff. Anything you love, the Grease soundtrack, Beatles, I mean, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
You know, I just feel like, and it's really funny too, because, you know, as I got older, there were records and albums that got played out on the radio when I was a kid. And I was like kind of, when the whole punk and new wave thing happened, there were certain records I was like, I don't want to hear that anymore. It's, you know, and then as time went on, I learned to love those records again. Sure. There was enough of a break from them being beaten to death on the radio. And I appreciate some of the most popular songs of all time. And that's just because, you know, for me, it's like music. It's just, you know, the greatest experience to enjoy music, whatever that is. I don't if it's somebody also wrote Sound of Music soundtrack or West Side Story. You know what I mean? Yeah. Which is great. You know, those are great. Like, there's songs on those records. You know, everybody. And I also believe everybody's got to start somewhere. So, like, you know, it's really funny when we did a thing at the end of the Limp Bizkit album, and we're just like, and I'm ranting and making fun of like, you know, of certain pop music. I really have nothing at all against pop or boy bands. I mean, I think, you know, everybody has a starting point, and there's some of those guys are great musicians and great singers. And my thing is, whatever you like when you're starting out, whatever that gateway is, that record, that artist, should never be ashamed of, because it's the thing. It's literally your gateway into your love of music for your life, and that no matter what that is, if it's In Sync, if it's, you know, I mean, if it's you know, like the Osmonds, whatever it happens to be from whatever time, that's your thing. You should never feel bad about that. It's you know, it's one of those things that so I've never, and I certainly, you know, through my, you know, career, I've met and become friends with people from all different things. I remember Chris Patrick from NSYNC is like one of my great friends. You know, it's like, and I remember when Justin Timberlake was like so excited to meet me the first time he came up to when he was a kid, when he came up to MTV. Yeah. You know, so I just I believe you should like whatever you like, and you know, and I mean, like I said, you know, I could on this corner, I could be listening to a Five Finger Death Punch song, and over here, ABBA. So it's like whatever, you know, it's like whatever, you know,
I hear you.
Between, you know.
Yeah, when I grew up, it was growing up in Canada. I had Barry Manilow from the mom, and I had Rush and April Wine from the older brother. So and Supertramp in between. So.
Oh, and you know what? My new comedy podcast, one of the guys from Supertramp does some of the music for it, which is really cool. But I love
to ask you about that.
Well, yeah, you know, I just wanted to say though, that's cool. Your mom liked Barry Manilow, right? I mean, Could It Be Magic? It was a great song.
Oh, please, right? Mandy.
Yeah, right, Mandy, right? I mean, those singles were great. They were great pop singles and really well crafted pop singles. And you know what, April Wine, man, It Could Have Been a Lady. That song.
Yes.
Great tune. You know, that's originally done by the band Hot Chocolate, the band who did You Sexy Thing and Everyone's a Winner, Babe. Yeah, there was a cover, and they did a cover of it, but they had the big hit in America and Canada. And I certainly loved Rush as a kid. You know, it was great to see them and Cheap Trick and UFO all in the same night.
That's fantastic.
You know, they used to have these triple package deals at the New York Palladium in New York City, which no longer exists. It's now the NYU dorms, and that venue was so historically and cool. Seeing bands like the Jam there. I was there the night that Paul Simonon smashed his bass on the cover of London Calling. I was sitting on the floor on the back, but on the other side.
Wow.
You know, on the Mick Jones side. Strummer was in the middle. Paul Simonon was on his side. I was on the other side. And when I saw him do it, I went, oh, man, he's either pissed at that bass or he's doing a Pete Townsend.
Right.
And I loved the Clash. So, and it was, you know, they were one of the best live bands. But it's amazing that I was actually there at that moment, that picture was snapped on the cover of London Calling.
That's pretty iconic.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, you know. I'm grateful that I went to a lot of those shows when I was younger, but I certainly was like into a lot of that punk and new wave stuff. But at the same time, I still listened to AC/DC. I loved Bon. Bon Scott was, of course, still in the band then, and it was still alive, and Thin Lizzy, and like I loved a lot of rock. You know what I mean? So I loved rock. I loved new wave and alternative punk. I liked everything, even if it was a great pop song. I mean, music.
Did you ever listen to a band called Stars?
Yeah, I loved them. In fact, I saw them live. I will tell you a story. My friend Doug Broad, who was the editor of Spin Magazine, wrote a book, and the title is from the Cheap Trick song "Surrender." It's called the book's called "They Just Seem a Little Weird," and I loved Stars. In fact, I went to see Stars with Doug Broad and my friend Jonathan Daniel, who manages Green Day, Weezer, Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy, Sia. I don't know, the list is like goes on and on. But we were all big Stars fans as kids. In fact, my other friend out here who managed me for a little while, I'm the only this was back in the MTV days. He managed me when I went to Farm Club and then Columbia Records and helped me with because I asked him, you know, hey man, I need some help with making this move when the MTV thing ended. This guy named Dave Becky, now he manages Kevin Hart, Chris Rock. He manages all the biggest comedians in the world. I was the only non-comedian that company ever managed, and oh wow. And it was the thing we all had in common is we all loved Stars. So this is a band with a Z, Stars.
Yeah.
And I saw them play that Violation tour. It was Judas Priest opening Sin After Sin. Wow. And then it was REO Speedwagon, who most people at that period of time in New York didn't know who REO Speedwagon were because they never played them on the radio. They were on in the Midwest. It was before their hit era. So they put out a live album called "You Get What You Play For." It was a double album, and they were great. I mean, they played really. I didn't know who they were. I went there to see Stars and Judas Priest, and I said, "Oh, REO Speedwagon." I've seen their records in the store, and then I bought that live album. But Stars were this band. They were the one band out of that group that didn't make it. Out of Aerosmith, Kiss. I mean, there were more than them, but they were certainly a band that a lot of musicians really loved. And those first two albums, the self-titled, and then Violation was like a big one. I loved the record, and I did that song "Cherry Baby" in like my first high school band. You know, what I mean?
Nice. That's great.
You know, trying to sing Michael Lee Smith, get those notes as high. It was,
Well, Richie Rano in Stars, the guitarist, is a good friend of mine.
Oh, and Richie knows I love those guys.
I know, and so when I told him that I was going to be interviewing you, he was, Richie's great. Like he's got stories like you, but he's very humble. He's like, yeah, just tell Matt I said hi. I'm like, okay, Rich, I will. Yeah, I actually interviewed Richie here on my channel a bunch of weeks ago. He's but I had to get that out there. He wanted me to tell you that he says hello. So Richie's a great guy. Yeah, Richie is such a great dude. I just love that band. Growing up, and I was like, I was trying to turn people on. I'm like, you gotta hear Stars, man. You gotta hear Stars. So I've always, it's amazing. There's all these people now that are in the music business that loved Stars growing up. You know what I mean? And even people like Slash was into them. You know what I mean? Like Six. So all those bands, we liked all that stuff. Hot Chocolate, Everyone's a Winner, New Wave Girl said, you're right. That is one of the greatest songs. My band,
I used to have another band in college called Opium Vala, which was a fake drug. And we did Everyone's a Winner, which was cool. And I sang that, like I played it for one of my girlfriends once. I go, you know what this is? And she goes, I don't know. Is it? She asked me if it was some artist. I go, no, it's actually me singing. She goes, that's you singing? Because at that point I could hit these really high notes.
Sure.
Earl Brown from Hot Chocolate doing Everyone's a Winner. And that guy Ty Segall just covered that song. But such a classic tune. But
so,
any other questions from anybody? I'm here.
I wanted to ask you, is there anyone that, I mean, you've interviewed everyone from Paul McCartney to whoever. I mean, is there someone that you haven't interviewed yet that you still want to?
Yeah, Neil Young. Neil Young is about the only one right now that's alive that I haven't interviewed, and I know he's familiar with who I am, and like he knows I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And we just have not crossed paths, or I haven't gotten the opportunity to interview him. And I guess Dylan, right? But I mean, Dylan doesn't do a whole lot of interviews, but I have met him, you know what I mean, which is really cool. And he was super nice, and he watched MTV. I couldn't. It's really crazy, like when.
Yeah.
Like Jerry Lee Lewis watches MTV and he knows you from MTV. You're like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Bo Diddley, like Bo Diddley was a legend, man. The coolest thing ever was, I tell the story, like I'm walking through the hallways at Sirius XM and Bo, I go through the performance, the glass room, like that's kind of not too far off from the entrance on the floor in New York. And like, it's the most iconic thing ever. I open the door and there's Bo Diddley sitting on his amp with his guitar. Wow. That rock and roll legend. And I looked and I go, Bo, I just want to tell you, man, thank you so much for all the great, amazing contributions you made to rock and roll. And he goes to me, I ain't done yet. I ain't done yet. It was the best. It was so cool, man. I just, and sadly he died like about 6 months later, but it was just so cool to meet some of those pioneer guys. Like Jerry Lee Lewis came to MTV and he was hanging out with me and Henry Rollins. It was pretty awesome. You know what I mean? It was a great time. So I love that, any of those, any of that old rock and roll. But, I know you started to talk about my podcast. I want to let people know about this comedy podcast thing. Now it's a new thing. There's 4 episodes that are up right now. It's on Spotify. It's called Missed Riffs, and it's a comedic podcast. The idea was, I'll tell you, and you'll get a kick out of this. It was, my friends came to me and they were like, you know what? There's this new podcast company that one of my old coworkers at Columbia Records, this guy, John Ingrassia, who's a great friend of that I worked with there, was one of the GMs. He was starting to work for this company. And then Rick Krim, who's involved with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and was, one of the guys who ran VH1's music. And they both were telling me, like, John's working there, and Rick goes, you should talk to these guys about maybe doing some kind of new podcast. Because, when I started my original podcasts, I did them before anybody ever knew about them. So I did one at MTV they never promoted with all these great interviews. Then I did one through Westwood One that was connected to one of my syndicated shows. Again, it was never promoted, but there were all these interviews. So this one is finally getting promoted. So, right, see, there's 4 episodes. Now, Missed Riffs is a comedy podcast, and they're all, as you can see, they're all like 7 minutes long. They're not long.
Yeah.
And imagine Behind the Music meets Spinal Tap, or, or The Lonely Island, or The Ruddles. That's what it is. It's like comedy, fake bands, and like these stories about these bands and their mishaps. That's what the idea is, Missed Riffs. And it's really funny because it's guys from, like, I got Rob Halford, as I said, from Judas Priest to do a voice for one. And, I mean, a lot of people are going to do it. Like, some of like the new pop artists and hip hop artists are going to add their voices. That's just kind of talking about, like I'm going to get Duff and Slash and Billy Gibbons and all these other guys to go on there and just say like, oh yeah, like, oh, I couldn't stand up band. They opened for us and they blew, like just really crazy stuff. But every single one of these is kind of making fun of a genre, or it's like a hybrid of 2 genres. It's they're really ridiculous, but at the same time, they're entertaining. We came up with the concept because, when everybody was so down during the pandemic and things were, it was so, it was doom and gloom on the news every day, and it was just, you could drive yourself crazy. And we're like, you know what? People need something to laugh at. I also thought it was cool because it was out of my comfort zone. It was something different for me to do, something that had to do with comedy. And so we started working together on these, and these guys write these, and I throw in ideas with them, and it's real musicians, like guys you would like from all different bands that are writing and recording these songs, like anonymously and the songs are hilarious. They're like, they're just ridiculous and crazy. And we've already, right now there's 4 episodes out, and we're going to release one every week.
Awesome.
Again, it only takes people 7 minutes to listen to them, so it's like 4 minutes of me telling this insane story and then 3 minutes of a song. And these guys have written these songs. And if you go to it, you can see there's like a trailer that explains it called Welcome to Miss Riffs on there, kind of like it is on all the podcasts that are on Spotify.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
If you folks people watching get a chance, please check it out and sign up for it. I'd really appreciate it. It's a labor of love, man. We just wanted to have fun, make fun of ourselves, make fun of every genre of music. I mean, the people that are getting involved in doing it are just like, everybody's just like self-deprecating and having a blast. So it's a lot of fun, and you got wait till you see some of the episodes that are coming. This stuff is out of control. It's insane. But
what else are you working on? You got anything coming up?
Yeah, there's a pilot. There's a bunch of stuff happening. Like I just shot this TV show called No Cover. Now I don't know if people know, but I'm also in that show on Amazon Prime, Paradise City, which is a show that features Andy Black is like, from Black Veil Brides. He's like one of the main characters. And band members from like Asking Alexandria and these other bands are in the show. But what we would like about the show is it's also got Drea DiMatteo from Sons of Anarchy and Entourage, other cast members like, Mark Boone Jr. of Sons of Anarchy, and the guy who played Opie on Sons of Anarchy. It's like the guy who played Billy Walsh, Reese, who was in Entourage. It's people from Sopranos, Sons of Anarchy, and Entourage. And it's a show about rock and roll in the music business. It's called Paradise City. There's 8 episodes of season 1 on, and Bella Thorne's in it. And that's the guy Cameron Bryce who passed away, which was very sad. He died of a literally an accidental seizure that had. I mean, he was a sweetheart, a young actor who'd been a Disney actor. He's on it, but we lost him.
I remember him, sure, yeah.
Yeah, and it was very sad when we lost him because he was such a great guy and really joy to work with, So I put myself in that show, and I like but I'm in multiple episodes. So I'm in like about 3 episodes, I think, and then my voice is in a bunch. But it's a crazy show, and it's on Amazon Prime. And it was when it first got released, a couple months back, it was number 1, for a while on a bunch of platforms. So if you get a chance, check that out, Paradise City. It's a really cool show. I also just shot this show called No Cover. Now this show is we wanted to do something that was kind of like the anti-American Idol or Voice, and that's not not a disrespect to them,
right.
We just felt like doing something that was like, well, wait a minute, why don't we? And listen, again, I've said this earlier in the show. I don't begrudge anybody for going on the shows to try to get discovered. I think like it's you love music. If it's your way to get seen or get a look, then it's important. There's no judgment there. I think people use whatever it takes to try and get to that next step in their musical career. But this show is a rock and alternative music competition that's all original songs. You have to have original songs. So it is bands, it's some singers as well. Like there's some like electro dance music involved, but it's rock, a lot of rock bands, alternative bands, and it's in that way. Even singer-songwriters, it's a little bit of that. But the thing that is the common thread in the show is that it's all original music. You have to write your own tunes. And so we shot a first season of it. We're, pretty shortly, I think they'll announce what network or streaming service it's going to be on. That's being worked out at the moment. But the judges are Alice Cooper, Gavin Rossdale of Bush,
right?
Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm, what do you call it? Bishop Briggs and Tosin Abasi, who's an incredible guitar player, in that band, Animals as leaders. So they're on it. And then there's a bunch of other people that are kind of like mentors. But we shot it, we shot 2 weeks straight at the Troubadour and at the Sunset Marquee. and there was some incredible talent that came through there. It was just pretty amazing. So that's the next show that at some point will launch, and I'm just working on a bunch of different things. I'm very grateful because, like I said, I have that show Flashback I've been doing for 10 years. It's being carried on 100 radio stations in the US and Canada. And it's a weekend 4-hour classic rock history show. And that's also on the American Forces Network. And then I love because I live in Los Angeles, I love doing my radio show on KLOS, New and Approved, it's called. And it's, it's a countdown. It's a 10, biggest rock songs in Southern California this week in rock, and then the album anniversaries. And it's a ton of interviews, like I said. So like earlier I said, it was be Royal Blood, Pretty Reckless, you know what I mean? Dirty Honey, things like that. And then you would be, and then of course it would be a lot of classic guys like Sammy Hagar was on there, and Michael Anthony, and Angus Young from AC/DC was on recently. And, it's just a lot of fun, man. I love doing a show. I mean, I love it being this one. You can stream it anywhere. It's Sunday nights, 8 to 10 in Pacific, so you can stream it anywhere. But I love that I'm doing a show specific to the city that I live in. Yeah. Because, I live here. And, I've been, I'm always going to be a Jersey guy. There's no question about it. I bring my jersey wherever I go. But you know what I mean? And I'm very proud of that, but my roots in Jersey and New York, I love everybody there, but it's been really great, to be able to do this show there. And the set that they use, you can go back and watch all the old interviews if you go to 955klos.com or the KLOS YouTube channel. There's a ton of my interviews on there. And this past week I had Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction and Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. And they got a new project called Mend, and they've got Dave Bryan from Bon Jovi on it, Elliot Easton from the Cars. It's like this song that they wrote to support a friend. The interview's really funny. It's wild. It's pretty classic. So if you're a fan of Foo Fighters, you should definitely check it out. I'm grateful to be alive. It's been cool. I love, for me, it's, as long every day, like you said, it's a gift every day that I wake up knowing that music is in my life and music is around me. And I love my daughters are healthy and they're doing great. And, that's the most important thing in the world. I'm a single dude, but that's okay. That'll come later on. I'm not worried about that right now. I'm not in this. I'm just like that. That's got to happen naturally. That's got to be the natural progression. I'm not worried about that right now.
Yeah, I got you. I'm
trying to say when I meet somebody, I'll know it's right. And that's cool. But in the meantime, I'm just very, very grateful for everything that's going on in my life today, and that I'm really, really healthy. And, and I've been doing, working out a lot. Even during the pandemic, I was hiking like crazy, doing a lot of exercise, hiking with friends. You know what I mean? That's the cool thing about living in LA where I live, because it's really close to Griffith Park, which you go up all through these incredible mountains. There's actually one area not far from here where the original Batman Batcave is. The Batcave at the beginning of the TV show, that's up there in the hills, not too far from here. So there's all kinds of crazy landmarks.
That's great.
In Griffith Park, you can hike up over the observatory that's in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean and Natalie Wood, when they're sitting in the observatory.
Yeah.
A lot of TV and film history. So it's awesome. A lot of fun. But,
Listen, it's been great to talk to you. I mean, we could talk to you for hours and listen to your stories. But
I can't believe it's been an hour and a half, man. This flew.
Time flies when you're having a good time, right?
Yeah, I just want to thank you. Oh, thank you so much for what you wrote. 2B Girls. I don't have any questions, but want to say thank you so much. I really appreciate it. That's really beautiful of you to say. Thank you. And I want you to know, to you and to everybody who's watching, how much I appreciate you. You mean the world to me. And I never ever take for granted how blessed I've been, to be able to share my passion for music with everybody. There's nothing, that ever brought me more joy than turning somebody on to an artist or a song or a record that they loved. That's kind of been my MO since I was a kid. There's a picture of my high school yearbook with me literally
Right.
holding an album and two people are looking at it. It's like, and it
Yeah.
was closed. It was just like somebody took it and it kind of, it really, that's the kind of always been my MO in my life. And, but thanks for taking that. Thanks for having me on. And I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much for that. Or Tech. Thank you.
I appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you so much. I appreciate
There's
everybody.
a great group of people here that follow and watch every time I come on here. But there was a lot of buzz when I was putting it out there. Like Matt's coming on, and we're going to talk to him, and everybody had something that they wanted to share. Oh, I first saw him on 120 Minutes, or I listened to this. But I mean, everybody, I appreciate you. And again, not a lot of people know this. We talked about this offline before we came on, but I'm going to put it out there. When I turned 50 back in October, you were very kind. Our mutual friends, like, hey, man, just send this guy a video message wishing him a happy birthday. Didn't know me from Adam, but you still did it. So thank you.
Of course, and it was
appreciate
great,
that.
and it's one of your friends, and it was no, it was my pleasure. And look, it got us here together today on this and on your podcast, and I loved it. This was a great experience.
Do you ever? I know we talked briefly about you doing a Twitch thing once before, and there was a question before asking, and then I promise I'll let you go. But ever have any interest or any thought cross your mind of maybe doing something on Twitch?
Yeah, maybe you and I should talk about that and try to figure out what that is, or maybe do something fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a great platform, and I probably should definitely look into it. You know what I mean? So
I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here. After the show is done being live, the video stays on my Twitch channel, and then I usually broadcast it on YouTube as well. But usually, yeah, the videos get over 400 views, give or take. Very fortunate. So,
great.
yeah, man, it's a lot of fun. Would love to, if you're ever interested in doing something on Twitch, whether it's with me or just doing your own thing, whatever I could do to assist or be a part of with you, absolutely would love to.
That'd be great. I would love to. I would definitely want to talk to you further about it. And I wanted to tell you how much a great time. And I want to thank everybody who spent this hour and a half with us. It means the world to me, and I want to wish you all the best. And I hope you have an incredible summer. And thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Can you, Matt, do you mind just holding out 1 second?
Yeah, of course.
All right. So obviously, Matt, thank you for being on here. Just real quick, everybody, just sit tight, Matt. Real quick, everybody, tomorrow. I hope you guys all enjoyed this as much as I did. I appreciate you all being here for this. Tomorrow, doing a Ray Train, hard rock and heavy metal. I'll put all the stuff up. I'm loving this and in awe. So thanks everybody for watching. We'll check you out again soon. I'll be doing another one of these on June 9th with Steve Brown, formerly of Trickster and Def Leppard, J3 from Tommy Lee's band, Eric Stewart, the VP of Dean Guitars, Paul Riario, Guitar World editor, James McGill, singer, songwriter, a bunch of great guys, guitarists. So with that, I want to say to everybody, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you all again very soon. Take care, everyone. Thank you.